Welcome back to Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises, joined by Stephen Godfrey. Bill Landis will be along shortly. Landis and I will do a big game breakdown on Ohio State, Tennessee. In the big middle part of the show, we will end with what you watching, what you eating, what you thinking. But we are starting, Stephen, with you because we like to talk to you. So how are you?
Well, I like to talk to you, sir. How are you? I'm good.
There's a lot happening, and we're excited to have you here. We want to talk about some Tennessee vibes, some SEC vibes. You're always so good on coaching stuff. But I want to start with a coaching question for you from your view, because I do think sometimes you can be too close to things. And my first question is this. Do you believe that Ohio State is the best job in the country?
If it's not one, it's 1A. 2 or 3 at the very least. If you're saying if all things were equal and every job in its current state was open tomorrow,
yes,
I do think it is some sort of combination of Ohio State, Texas. I don't include Georgia because I think the success that would catapult Georgia to this conversation, people are going to think I'm crazy not to include Georgia, has been reliant on the native son aspect of it, and Okay. I'm curious how much that would sustain. Whereas Texas is about resources. Ohio State, I think is immune to worrying about anyone's regionality, anyone's background. So what I'm doing is I'm talking out a long way of saying, yes, I believe so.
Yeah. It's interesting because depending what happens with Ryan Day, I think there may start to be an argument at Ohio State that being a native son is getting closer to a requirement. That when you look at Woody Hayes and you look at Earl Bruce and you look at Jim Tressel and you look at Urban Meyer as a native Ohioan, and then you look at John Cooper and Ryan Day, who were not that, I would wonder if this doesn't work out with Ryan Day, if Ohio State would feel like a place that's like, you know what, you've got to really understand us. You've got to be from here. But I don't know that that's, how much do you believe that's the case at a lot of places? That if not being an alum necessarily, but being from the region, from the area, having an understanding. Do you believe that's important in a lot of jobs?
Yeah, but yes and no. But I'm kind of really interested that you started the conversation in this manner. I think Ohio fundamentally has a certain openness and transience to it. I think it's one of the few states nationally that represents almost all portions of America in terms of culturally. I think you and I have joked about this before, where if you're in Columbus or you're in Cleveland, people talk, well, there's rednecks down in Cincinnati. It's like, because there's that aspect of Appalachia and sort of what we call the South, at least in the Kentucky sense of the word, that's represented in Ohio. I think it's one of the reasons why it's always sort of a political swing, other than its actual size. So I think there's a way to ingratiate yourself into Ohio fundamentally, regardless of your walk of life. But I think it's more interesting. Ohio State's not defined by Ohio, nor is Michigan defined by Michigan. In fact, historically, Michigan would come south to grab a few players. I think we are long past the days of Ohio State defining itself by Ohio football or even by the region. You and I know have discussed before, right?
Not in players. Clearly.
Not in players.
Correct. But I wonder, and I would have argued before, I've always said you can't limit your coaching pool to you've got to be from Ohio to coach this team, because you're limiting the brain power. But if this doesn't go well with Ryan Day, man, it is an argument the other way when you see that Urban Meyer grew up with a Buckeye in his pocket and Jim Tressel's dad was going to play at Ohio State before World War II happened, and he grew up wanting nothing more than to be a part of Ohio State, and what Woody and Earl were as Ohio State guys. Like it would be another data point, Stephen, that I would have said, no, you can't be that way, but it would be a data point the other direction.
I suppose, but I don't look at the failings thus far, and really, let's be honest, we're talking about the Michigan rivalry. I would look at the failings thus far and say his lack of Ohio bona fides are the culprit here.
Well, But if you believe that they are not playing their best game on the last Saturday in November against Michigan,
Yeah.
why are they not doing that? Is it because he didn't grow up with the rivalry and so he doesn't understand it at a fundamental level in a way that gets his team and his players to play their best, especially in a world when so many more of those players are not from Ohio? Back in the old days, a lot of the players used to be from Ohio. They grew up in the rivalry. Now, Jeremiah Smith didn't grow up in the rivalry. Caleb Downs didn't grow up in the rivalry. Will Howard didn't grow up in the rivalry. So does that mean the coach needs to have grown up in the rivalry even more so he can have his players absorb it from him? I'm not necessarily arguing this, but I am wondering about it for the first time in a way that I had not wondered about it before Ohio State played a bad game against Michigan a couple weeks ago.
No, because I don't think that the losses have been a result of a lack of emotional investment. I think the losses have been, you can identify a couple key. Now, the problem is, I would say the reasons are different as you go loss to loss. They got out schemed. The offensive scheme from Chip Kelly was bad.
Yeah.
It was not, it was
and
not
they've admitted
creative.
that. They've admitted that in the days since.
I'm going to oversimplify here for a second, but I kind of hate it when media pass themselves off as sort of being able to talk scheme at equal footing as a coordinator. But in the sense of oversimplification, the Chip Kelly run game is based on establishing patterns, subverting, and then modifying those patterns. You could say that roughly the same thing outside of pretty much anyone who doesn't line up under two tight ends and just wants to run, kind of mash you in this era. I was shocked at how vanilla the attack was. I was shocked at how the lack of creativity. I think we could have a conversation about the executive decision to roll with Will Howard this season. We could talk about that maybe in its sort of own pocket debate. But this is a vastly different circumstance. It ends the same way. It ends in a loss as last year, in which a better team beat you.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's the getting up for the game, because God knows, I would have a really hard time, and you would know better than me. I would have a really hard time believing that the week to 10 days going into that game in that building in Columbus, that there was anything less than a total awareness of the stakes, circumstances, and emotion of the game.
I agree with that. It's almost like, is there too much awareness? Because I do think part of the vanilla is, are they trapped in trying to be tough, trying to out Michigan, trying to establish the run because they want to when that's not their game, which is, but let me go. Let me pull out 20,000 feet again with you on this.
Okay.
You're so good on the coaching stuff.
Okay.
When you get to a point like this, again, I'm so in it, living here in Columbus, Ohio, and having covered Ohio State for almost 20 years. What does the coaching world think of the fact that Ohio State has either the best job or one of the three best jobs, and the guy currently in it had never been a head coach before at any level before he got that job? And now, and again, I am just questioning Ryan Day more than I ever have based on one game, based on that Michigan loss. But if he is not the head coach next year, anybody they hire would have a better resume than Ryan Day had when he got hired, because they would hire somebody who's been a head coach before. There's no doubt about that. It's like indisputable. So it's just, have you ever heard or have you ever thought that, like, wow, it is wild that the head coach of Ohio State was a guy who was a quarterback's coach in the NFL and a 2-year coordinator in Columbus and got the job?
It's a unique circumstance, surely. If you're looking for comps very quickly, you'd probably struggle to find them. But in the modern game, the place that the conversation we're going to have now is, it's back down south, which is the Sabanification of the assistant cycle. Kirby was a defensive coordinator in Alabama for a long time and sort of survived the ruthlessness of the Saban culture. He was more than qualified by every estimation, professionally and casually, when he took the Georgia job. He has since transcended the idea that a Saban assistant is lesser than by beating his mentor, winning multiple national titles, etc. So this is not, to me, that's not a stretch. At the time, there was no viable candidate that could convince you Day wasn't a logical extension of Urban without Urban problems. It wasn't.
That I agree with. I admit that I am, and this is not even like a second guess because it's been 6 years and they've won a bunch of games. It's not like it flamed out and exploded.
No.
It's just a question now.
They played in the national title game.
Yeah. No, they've been right there, right? They make a field goal. They might have a national against Georgia 2 years ago. They might have a national championship.
I think they definitely do, by the way.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. They lose. And this is why one of those, like, I often push back against a lot of the Ryan Day stuff because, again, you have to find a way to win big games. But, even the Oregon game this year, the Jeremiah Smith offensive pass interference call is like a little iffy. And then Will Howard is 1 second. Like they've been so right on the edge of some of those things. Even the Clemson playoff loss in 2019, there's a way they could have won that game. It was a little, you're responsible for your outcomes, but they've had sort of some bad breaks, I think, in some big games. I don't think they haven't shown up, but this changed it for me. Like this Michigan game really just opened my eyes in a different way. So do you think from your position in Tennessee and knowing the national coaching world, do you think he needs a run here to keep his job? Like, is that a conversation that you've heard?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that I'm going to be emphatic on this. And if you go back and look at, I was not shocked that Ross Bjork put himself in front of a situation and didn't come off with the air of authority that he probably thought he did. We've seen that Ross Bjork at Texas A&M during coaching searches that Ross was not actually in control of. We saw that Ross Bjork at Ole Miss in coaching searches that he was actually not in control of. The difference is I think Ohio State is so large and professionalized by comparison to even something like College Station that no one hired Ross thinking he would be the yay or nay, the sort of, like Coliseum thumbs up, thumbs down guy. That's not the AD that they hired. That's not what they wanted to do after Gene. Ross is there to be a fundraiser. Ross is good at raising money and spending money. And Ohio State's a place that you have to do that at scale. Yeah. It's such a large scale. So it makes sense in that regard. But this idea that he came out and said he's our kind of the NFL kiss of death vibe, I thought was very odd.
And
there's a conversation
that what else can he say?
That we're getting ready for the playoff, that we support him and we're really excited to get ready for the play. You have to give the boilerplate, the platitude, the pablum. You have to do that before. This is a different situation, Doug. We have a lot, potentially, we got a lot of games left. Potentially.
Yeah, for sure.
This is maybe the best defense in the playoff. Okay. This is maybe
in the conversation. Yep.
No doubt. And I'm kind of exhausted. And I know it's just been, it's been this span of time. I'm kind of exhausted by this idea of so-and-so's got a better shake in the bracket than so-and-so. We've never created anything in the sport that didn't have a certain significant percentage of upset involved. Ohio State's got as much of a puncher's chance as anybody in this field. I think they have the best defense. For as abysmal and uncreative as they were on offense against Michigan, they held them to 13 points, sometimes on short fields, very short fields, I believe. Right. So, what I would have said in that situation is, hey, we're getting ready. We're focused on the playoffs. Ryan's our coach. We'll see you guys in Columbus. We're getting ready for Tennessee. The conversation right now is that you have he loses this game. The agent community and the coaching community, the industry is expecting at the bare minimum inquiry to begin. At the bare minimum,
if they lose to Tennessee,
the apparatus springs to life. If they lose to Tennessee, now it's also a manner in which they lose to Tennessee.
Right.
What if they are as offensively? And by the way, I think Ohio State wins this game. I think we're playing in scenarios and hypotheticals, and that's fine. That's what we do. But I think Ohio State wins this game. I think that they are better. I think these are eerily similar teams. I went in studio in Nashville with a Tennessee grad, the host, and Ramon Foster used to play for the Steelers for a long, long time as a Tennessee grad. And we all kind of agreed yesterday. It was funny because we were talking about Ohio State. Their proxy to another, it is aggressive defense fronts. I think they're going to look very similar, but it's to me, it's funny because I think Ohio State is more talented and more effective minus the Michigan experience. And Tennessee
has offensive line problems too. Like Ohio State has some offensive line problems, so does Tennessee.
Right. And then there's a receiving core. And I think maybe the talent of Tennessee's defense is more front loaded literally to the front than it is on the back end. I think Ohio State's receiving core is good. We could be asking ourselves, which would lead to a Ryan Day referendum, would be, how close were you to Cam Ward? And we end up with Will Howard.
Yeah, I think they could have had Cam Ward. I'm not sure they were super interested. I think they made a choice.
Then what you just said, and it's always funny, and you know this game really well too, and we both know this game. What narrative resurfaces after the fact and who it's pushed by?
Yeah,
as rationalization for action. If you suddenly start hearing about Cam Ward in Ohio State, Ryan's in trouble because people are going to be pushing that and saying this was an executive failure in the offseason to get the most talented player available, because it's not as simple as swapping in positions, but sometimes it is. And you can imagine Cam Ward. Yeah, imagine Cam Ward in that circumstance against Michigan. And I'm just sorry, those third downs don't look the same.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting point. Now they seem like they have quarterbacks set up for the next couple of years. I don't think they'll be dancing in the portal anymore with Julian Saint and Tavian St. Clair there. But this is really important. Bill and I are going to make our picks on the Thursday show. But to me, and I want to talk about some Tennessee vibes with you. No offense to Tennessee, but if Ohio State can't beat Tennessee at home in a year when they brought everybody back to try to win the national title, then it's like, what are we doing here? You lost to Michigan and you couldn't beat Tennessee because, again, no offense to Tennessee, but also I can offend Tennessee on this show. It's fine.
Go for it.
Ohio State is top tier Big Ten. Tennessee is second tier SEC. Nobody thinks Tennessee is one of the best programs in the SEC, right? The top tier in the SEC is Alabama, Georgia, Texas. I'm talking program, and we'll see what Alabama does with Kalen DeBoer. But this is not like, as much as you think that they might be similar. Of course, Ohio State is more talented, so they're a touchdown favorite. So do you think, is Tennessee, and you're there in the state, are they embracing an underdog vibe here? Do they think, hey, we're going to go win this game? James Pierce is going to wreck the Ohio State offense? And does Tennessee need to win this game to establish itself as something, or is making the playoff already a great year for the Vols?
So we talked about that. It's funny. We talked about that specifically yesterday. I will say this. One thing Tennessee's experiencing that's very new to them is the pressure's off. Ohio State's in the existential crisis. Right?
100%.
You didn't play in Atlanta. So I think what Tennessee, probably in their best and most mentally healthy place as a booster core, as a fan base than I've lived in Nashville more than I've lived in anywhere else in my life. I'm going on, I think, 18 or 19 years here. I've never seen it like this. And I don't mean they're at fever pitch or they're super, I mean, the flags are out, the shirts are out, that kind of thing, in a way that they haven't. They are cautiously optimistic in a way that I haven't seen in a long time. But I do think that's because, Doug, they've slotted themselves. And I think this is the coaching staff too. This isn't just vibes. I think the staff has done a good job of saying, we know our deficiencies. We've seen them on the field. We've lost these games for these reasons. But we also know where we can be effective. I think the interesting thing, or maybe the compliment I would give Tennessee, is that they've won games in reductive situations, which where you could say they muddy it up, they can survive, that kind of thing. I don't necessarily think that comps to Ohio State, because I do think that they are out-talented in this game.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there isn't a need to justify your existence with this win. It's funny, you said second-tier SEC program, and I thought I was kind of kicking around whether or not I was going to agree with you. But you know what? The fact that if Texas gets bounced by Clemson, that's catastrophic.
Yes.
If Georgia loses whoever they get in the
Notre Dame, Indiana winner, right?
Catastrophic, right?
Yep.
Different because you have titles, but still bad season. Bad season. You lost Ole Miss. Georgia Tech should have beaten you, and then this happens. And what's the third program you said? Oh, Alabama. Outlier situation, kind of hard to talk about, to be totally honest with you. Because it's post-Saban. This program could leave a 10 or 13 or 14 point loss this weekend and say, we're on the right path.
With a young quarterback, especially. Yep.
We're on the right path.
I agree.
Also, this coach, who was a bridge coach for Danny White, not a bridge coach. This oversimplified pass skeleton AAC thing where we're just chucking the ball around and, oh, hey, guess what? It's so funny, Doug. I don't know if this translates to the Big Ten, there has been a rash in the South of the last 5 to 10 years of a demonization or denouncing of successful offensive schemes. And every time they come to the SEC for the first time, they say, that ain't going to work here. And it always does. Because it's not about scheme, it's about personnel. So Heupel is not some born yesterday idiot who is going to take the UCF playbook 1-to-1. What he did was he went out and he made Tennessee better on the lines than they ever have been. So yeah, they're going to run the ball more than he did at Central Florida. Same thing could have been said before he passed about Mike Leach. Mike Leach's first game in the SEC, he took a Stanford transfer and set the SEC single game passing record against the defending national champion. COVID destroyed our brains, but in September of 2020, that happens. Kevin Hogan, the Stanford transfer, broke the SEC's all-time record for single game passing yards against the defending national champs. So that's more of an aside, more of a saw for me. But like, they are in a place where the bid is proof of concept, the bid to the playoff.
Agree.
Ole Miss would have been the same way. And in a weird way, talking about the most overexposed, the most dominant, the most household brand, Alabama would have been too, because they are constantly looking for the reassurance that there will be life after. And they don't have that reassurance right now.
They don't have it right now.
No.
So then overall, so we've done a little bit of this, the SEC vibes then.
Mad.
We did an outrageous prediction show where I said no Southern team will beat a Northern team in the playoff because
I gotta look at
Clemson, Texas, Arizona State is a bracket. So one of them's getting to the semis. But all that is Ohio State beating Tennessee, the Notre Dame, Indiana winner beating Georgia, Penn State beating SMU, right? That's all. And then this in the semis, the Ohio State, Oregon winner beating the Clemson, Texas, Arizona State survivor. I don't even think it's that outrageous. It's actually what I think is going to happen. But specifically with the SEC, like are they, if they don't get a team in the semis, which I don't think is impossible, I think Notre Dame could beat Georgia. I think Texas could be upset by either Clemson or Arizona State. And I think, certainly Tennessee is probably not going to get there. Would that be an existential crisis for that conference? They have a Netflix documentary coming out on this season. I said the title of that Netflix documentary should be The Bid to Be Mid. If they don't get a team in the semis, have they lost their identity in a year where they didn't have a top 10 Heisman finisher for the first time since 2005, in the year where the undefeated number 1 team is from the North, in a year where we have the defending national champions from the North? The SEC is on fire. Oh, I like when you egg me on, Steven. I'm like, what would happen? What would happen if my scenario comes to fruition? And do you think it could?
Probably the craziest, or not craziest, the riskiest part of that claim is the Indiana Notre Dame winner in the Sugar Bowl, just because that stacks against.
Get my swords out.
Get your swords out. So the Sugar Bowl would probably be the breaking point of that prediction. I would just like
the Gunnar Stockton Sugar Bowl, but yeah,
I mean
Notre Dame's pretty good.
I will say this, Doug. I have predicted against. I have analyzed against. I'm not a reporter anymore. I mean, kind of, just not in that traditional way. I've done every verb you can against Georgia this year. It feels like close to unkillable. They have replicated that nuisance level of sort of prime mid-era Saban Bama. And it is because of their defense. It's going to be the most talked about elbow in college football. I just wanted to, I was laughing while you were going through, because I was like, look, let's not kid ourselves. Sometimes I have a hard time thinking like, well, Oregon's the North or whatever, but I don't, that's not where I'm going. I was laughing because if you had to go through and perform a census at Arizona in like Tempe, in the Tempe, Phoenix metro area, let's be honest. How many Southerners are there, and how many transplanted snowbirds and Whitsec mob informants?
I agree.
Are you guys? What I'm saying is, you pick one up, baby. You might have one.
Okay, that's true.
You should lay claim. It's your snowbird town or whatever.
We're not taking the desert, but I mean, I really think it could happen, and I don't think, like, we did a show, Stephen, where we ranked all 12 teams in a bunch of categories. I don't think the skill at Georgia is very good compared to a lot of other teams. Who's the most dangerous guy with the ball in his hand on the Georgia team?
No, this is the trick. This is what's so damn frustrating about them, because Texas, I think, is a better team. And yet, right? And so I think Georgia has a knack for this. And now you would assume when you're playing into risk as much as the Dogs have down the stretch that they would run up against a situation. I will say this, and I was doing my whole sports better when the whole country's involved shtick, which is so funny because nobody wants to hear that in any part of the country.
Oh, I love it.
But yesterday I was explaining to obviously a Southern audience, although we have our fair share of transplants around here. Oregon and Notre Dame, by the definition of their modern talking points, are not the same programs. So what I mean by that is Notre Dame in the playoff, Notre Dame in the 2012 BCS championship, Oregon in the playoff, Oregon in the 2010 BCS championship.
Game,
okay.
yeah.
So the fastest way to characterize what happened, what went wrong for both of those programs, was line play. Ohio State, that I think people forget that was supposed to be the first year of the 14 playoff was supposed to be Oregon's coronation. That's Marcus Mariota. That's the height of the post. It's the post-chip blur. And we're going to redefine what college football is and all that stuff. And guess what? We found Ohio State. And what did we find? We found a hell of an offensive line and a hell of a defensive line for the Buckeyes. And that redefined that. If you go back and watch that championship game, very, very quickly in that game, you realize, oh, they can't do 60, 70, 80% of what they want to do on offense, because it's penetration, it's run fits, it's every single play. The one-on-one matchups, or if you want to gap it or zone it, whatever, they're losing. And for all of the evolution, real fast, for Oregon, for instance, how many coaches they've evolved through since that happened in 2014. So it's 4 coaches, I believe. Just 1 coach in South Bend. Doesn't really matter. The focus and the execution and the change of personnel philosophy in high school recruiting and the portal and everything else, Oregon and Notre Dame are now, I would say, close to 180 degrees the opposite of how you define them. So it's not so Notre Dame was an easy trope for us Southerners to say, that's national media overhyping, that's leaning too much on tradition, they're going to get smoked when they play X. And guess what? Confirmed every time. Kelly, the Kelly Freeman debate is one that I go back to at least, I feel like, almost every week on the various shows that I do, because I think it will be a fascinating, if we can ever get a referendum on the Kelly Freeman, on that move, on him saying, you know what, it's Notre Dame, it's not me, I'm going to go to LSU and show you. And if it breaks the way it looks like it's going to break, that's hilarious. And on so many levels, some you'll like, some you won't. Especially for someone like for Marcus to come in again. By the way, Doug, you were doing the day resume a second ago. Marcus Freeman was, his claim to fame was a really good defensive coordinator run at Cincinnati.
Yep.
And he is now, we look at him and you just saw the extension. So he's bona fide now, right? Like, you made it to that second contract, right? This is in a year you lost to the MAC.
Right. 38 years old.
It's funny to me because Oregon and Notre Dame might be a surprise and not a surprise. It's hard to call Notre Dame quiet, and it's hard to say the number 1 team in this entire thing is overlooked.
But
I
agree. I think especially Oregon is overlooked. So are you saying, from a Southern SEC vibes perspective, perhaps does the SEC not realize how good Oregon is, how good Notre Dame is? I think Penn State is a very similar thing as well. They have better quarterback play than they've ever had. They've always had a pretty good defense.
For what I'll cut you off. There's no respect for Penn State.
What about Oregon and Notre Dame? Like, I would think that perhaps, because I'll tell you up here, I have no respect for what the SEC is bringing to the playoff, because I don't think they can match up in quarterback play and skill position play. And I understand your defenses are good, SEC. I get it. But I think a lot of, like, even what you're talking about, Georgia, definitionally, they've been a nuisance. Like, Texas is a better team, but couldn't beat them. Well, I'm not sure how good Texas is at the elite levels. Their quarterback play killed them when it mattered in those games. So I think when Georgia plays a team like Notre Dame or Penn State or Oregon or Ohio State, they actually might have problems, because I don't think the SEC's own weaknesses have been exposed enough by SEC opponents, because I think everybody in the SEC isn't as good as people think they are.
Well, I definitely think that's the latter of that statement I agree with, and this is the year where everyone refuses to hear that.
We hear it here, but down there they refuse to hear it. We do this. We got a lot of this. Oh,
but,
yeah.
I'm trying to think
we're saying it. Woo! The SEC is
mid.
mid. Woo!
This is happening with every. I don't feel like
you bring out the sword in me,
like
Stephen Godfrey. The sword sits. The sword sits for 5 shows. Sits for 5 shows.
See, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. Yeah, Godfrey's on. Let's bring out the props.
Godfrey's on. Get the sword.
Like a Carrot Top set.
Oh my God. Get my cigarettes.
The SMU thing's really interesting to me, because if you're talking about, when I start looking at this thing absent of regionality or conference affiliation, and I just look at program history, it's funny because I can't give you one way or the other here, because Texas, postseason Texas, awfully suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
But good God, talk about James Franklin, talk about Penn State, and talk about premier moments. Talk about, like, and I hate the phrase "talk about," but I'm saying it sort of as a refrain.
Yeah,
Penn State.
No, I know.
Needs to command this game. Maybe more than, Ohio State is in a different situation.
Oh,
Penn State,
but we've said all year,
command this game.
The 12-team playoff is built for Penn State. They made it. They get a home game. If they lose to SMU in the first round, it's like, what are we doing? This was made for you. You didn't have, before they were stopped by Ohio State. Now that we've created a system where you don't have to beat Ohio State to accomplish almost all of your goals. So here you are with the home game against SMU. You've got to win. They have to win. So no, I agree with you. The North is in a great spot in a lot of ways, but the North is in a lot of you got to win spots also, and I would say to the occasion.
I would ask you, because on a national level, I think James has painted himself into a corner that I don't think he could get any job that financially would look bigger than Penn State, and so
which is probably a top 10 job. So there's not a huge number of jobs like that. Yeah.
No, but there's a very, very popular phrase in the coach carousel, military complex, and that is reset your clock. Reset your clock. Oh. Sometimes you need to reset your clock. And James's clock is how many years has it been? Feels like a decade, right?
10. Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, okay. So it's been a decade. Yeah. Since he left Nashville. I think James, 8.5 point favorite, better, I think, more talented. We don't have to go through it. I just finished a column for the Washington Post. And you'll have to forgive me only because I don't want to butcher the last name. This transfer situation for the backup, Pribula.
Pribula.
Yeah. Love it. Pribula. What was that? Slavic? Polish?
That I don't know. You talk. I'll Google.
All right, there we go.
Is Bo Pribula Slavic? Let's see.
The problem is
Siri is Bo Pribula. Go ahead.
I'm going to break the show. What's been very frustrating on the coaching front is that a good candidate right now is the head coach of the #1 Montana State team, and his last name is Vegan, but it's not spelled like the food vegan, and it's been it trips me up every time. Anyway, Lord, imagine a situation. God, I mean, and I'm not wishing anything on anyone. First off, they had a package for him. He was like, what, 10, 12, 15 snaps, 10 to something in that
goal line, red zone, short yardage, 100%.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's two quarterbacks in the field together, gone.
That's gone.
It's a real problem. It's an issue.
Warren Wildcat, I guess, is a thing, but
still there. Yep.
If Aller gets hurt, holy smokes!
Oh,
what a detriment! The bottom falls out. I mean, the situation, I know Georgia, that situation with the elbow, but Quinn Ewers has been banged up at times and inconsistent time, but you also have arguably the most talented backup who has seen significant snaps there, so it's less of a factor. I think, I'm not trying to volley back to you, but I do think on a national level there is a tremendous amount of. I am very skeptical of Penn State in a non-schematic, non-statistic, can't show my work way because of the performance of the head coach and the staff in these situations. And doesn't mean I think they'll lose to SMU. but I don't have confidence in them making a run.
So much of that is losing to Ohio State and Michigan, just like so much of Ryan Day is losing to Michigan, just like Marcus Freeman. Like Marcus Freeman lost to Ohio State twice in the previous 2 years. I'm wondering, I think there's like an SAT transitive property as Ohio State is to Michigan, Penn State is to Ohio State, Michigan. And when you free those teams from the things they can't overcome and just let them play other good teams without any of the mental stuff, what are they going to look like? That's what I'm really curious about. I think Penn State could look pretty darn good.
This is the comp here. And I know you and I have talked about this on air. We've talked about it off air about positioning the Big Ten, where the Big Ten has failed, I think, mightily in 20 years. I'm going to take your logic. And basically, so what you're saying is that Penn State is the actual barometer for quality in this league, not because they can't win it. It's because they've had situations where the true dominant brand names have been better. However, pull them out and apply them to the field at large of college football, and they'll show you the worth of this league. So essentially
100%.
what you're right. So it really comes down to, are they Tennessee? Like it's the same sort of logic that's being invested into that second tier SEC. And this 100%. Is the anger in Feinbaum country about, well, had Alabama gotten in there, it didn't really matter if they were a 9, it didn't matter if they were a 10. They would have taken care. They'd have gone to South Bend, take care of business there, but because they're Alabama. So what's funny to me, I guess not funny. This is a year in which we are also writing these sort of favorites and high seeds like Oregon and Texas specifically, who are not actually historically, culturally, or sort of even emotionally attached to these leagues. So it feels tricky. It feels weird. You have to have, I mean, yeah, Penn State is actually the barometer for the Big Ten then in that way. It's not Ohio State. It's not Oregon.
It's the barometer. And I used to go crazy in bowl season because I was using bowl season as a barometer for the Big Ten, because like Penn State doesn't play a bunch of great non-conference games. So like you don't get the barometer there, but then the bowls and the opt-outs, the bowls became nothing for a barometer anymore. This is a great barometer. So we're going to determine a real national champion the best way we ever have, but we are going to get a much better read on who has the best top of your conference. And this is why Penn State SMU is a huge deal. It's why Tennessee Ohio State is a huge deal for all these things. Can I ask you one question before I let you go?
Yes, sir. What's up?
Do you like Belichick at North Carolina or no? I don't like it. I don't think it's going to work.
I could have an hour-long conversation with you. I think ultimately I'm still pointing towards it's not going to work, because when you throw money, there's this weird thing about, we don't learn lessons sometimes. And there's 2 lessons we have not learned. Throwing money does not fix the problem. Otherwise, I'd be telling you about the 12th national title in a row by Texas A&M. Okay?
Yeah.
Throwing NFL expertise at college has never solved the problem.
Yeah.
Herm Edwards. Okay.
Agree.
Jim Mora. How many more can I do off the top of my head?
Charlie Weiss.
Oh my God!
Decided schematic advantage,
and yet, the exception there, and there are daywalkers, Doug. There are 2 men who are able to walk in both worlds, and they don't like each other, and that is one Jim Harbaugh and one Pete Carroll. Okay, and that's it, and that's it. And those are wildly different circumstances. By the way, Pete Carroll was a failed NFL coach when he went to. He was not a good NFL coach.
Okay.
That's the shortest way to explain it. Like, this was described to me by 2 different individuals who are unconnected before they made the hire official. This is the 2017 Tennessee of hires. And what they meant by that is, for your listeners who may not be super familiar, 2017 is the insane saga that John Curry, the AD who's now at Wake Forest, he gets fired during it. They fire Butch Jones. They think it's going to be Mike Leach. There's a coup. That's the Greg Schiano year. Like it's absolutely nuts, and it ends up with just a fundamentally terrible hire where Phil Fulmer comes in the vacuum of power, arrests control, and hires Jeremy Pruitt. It went great. Don't ask what happened next.
Woo.
North Carolina's the short answer to this. I don't know how much time we have before I'm out. The board of trustees was Max, and vice versa. Okay. The board of trustees sought to punish the actual decision makers for doing what needed to be done, which was telling Mac that it was time, because they had asked Mac. They wanted to create a Frank Beamer situation. If you recall, Frank Beamer and Whit Babcock, the AD at the time, or still the AD at Virginia Tech, It was obvious. They went to Frank and said, "You're a legend. You're the name. You set the date." Frank had a conversation with his wife one day and said, "Hey, it's late September. I know this is it. So that you can operate publicly and we do not have any palace intrigue, we're going to announce this, and then everything that transpires after that is above the level." North Carolina didn't work that way, Doug. Okay. North Carolina is not fundamentally serious about college football right now because they, up until some of the claims that we're seeing now, and I'll believe it when I see it actually on paper in investment and in hires, even with Bill Belichick. I'm sorry. I don't think this this is really just amounts to the fact that you already had an independently wealthy head coach who might be able to pull off some, I don't know if I can swear on this or not, hackneyed scheme to install his son in something that is even more gross and egregious and nepotistic than Iowa. That's basically what I think this was.
Oh, that's bad. Can I get 20 seconds on I like Rich Rod back at West Virginia? What do you think? I like it. I like it. I like it.
Doug, we've never seen this work. We've never seen it work.
Schiano's the exact example, and it's worked great. It's the exact same thing.
Schiano was contending for the Big East, and now he's a bowl coach at Rutgers. Bobby Petrino didn't work at Louisville. We've seen this happen. These Big East schools do this to themselves, and I don't understand why.
Schiano's perfect. I think Schiano is great. I think this is you don't think this is Schiano Redux? I love it for that.
No,
we've seen it. I was great. I left. It didn't work out. And now I came back around, and this is my home. I care about this place. I'm done striving. I want to be here because I want to win, but I want to win not just for myself, but for this place that I love and I know so well. Rich Rod spent more than half his life in that state.
Sure.
Just like Schiano's a Jersey guy through and through.
Okay.
And, Rutgers had some tough defensive injuries this year. I think they could have an even better season potentially than they did, but they had a good season.
I think they could have made there were better, more dynamic hires on the board. I think Kodalecki could have been one of them. I think Jeff Monken could have been one of them. I think there's
both those guys.
This was a default hire by parties interested because Rich Rod is nothing if not a cunning politician. There's also an individual who might be a highly overexposed human being and pro wrestling personality on a large cable network who had a heavy hand in pushing this through. I think that I like Rich Rod a ton. I like him schematically. I just think that this is the idea of this translating back to it's Slayton and White. It's 2007 again.
Yeah.
I don't see that. It's the same as the UCF hire. I thought the UCF hire was terrible too. Yeah. I don't think West Virginia is terrible. I don't think it's terrible. Scott Frost is a terrible hire. Scott Frost wasn't hired. Scott Frost didn't fail at Nebraska because of Nebraska reasons. Scott Frost failed at Nebraska because of Scott Frost. Full stop.
Yeah. I think Rich Rod failed at Michigan because of bad fit. Cultural is never the right guy for that job. But
that may be. I mean, I don't want to hoist up the Michigan pretension, but that was one of the worst cultural fits I've ever seen.
Yeah, absolutely
in the history.
But he's a great cultural fit in his home state. All right, he's Stephen Godfrey. We love having him on. Thanks for joining us, brother. We'll talk to you soon. When we come back, Bill Landis joining us on KOTN. Back on Kings of the North. It's not my fault, Landis. Godfrey makes me get my sword out. And once my sword comes out, the whole plan goes awry. So I apologize.
When he said he wasn't a huge fan of Rich Rod, I almost made myself a sandwich. You guys had another 45 minutes there.
Yeah. All right. But people want us to talk about this game, this Ohio State-Tennessee game. You ready to do a big game breakdown on the Buckeyes and the Vols?
Yeah, I am. Let's do it.
Second all-time meeting between Tennessee and Ohio State. Only played before in the 1996 Citrus Bowl, January 1st, 1996, after the 1995 season. Tennessee won 2014. What a banger. Those rosters. That was Eddie George versus Peyton Manning. Are you kidding me?
Whew.
Eddie George, Terry Glenn, Ricky Dudley, Bobby Hoying against Peyton Manning. Unbelievable. First, you mentioned this on one of our other shows, first SEC visit to Ohio Stadium since LSU in 1988. The only other ones, Kentucky and Vanderbilt in the 30s. But that's going to change. Ohio State has a home and home with Texas in 25 and 26. Ohio State has a home and home with Bama in 27 and 28. Unless the SEC gets all, we hurt our feelings because Bama didn't get in. We're canceling all of. We're not playing at non-conference games. Greg Sankey gets a chart. Unless Greg Sankey gets a chart and cancels those. And Georgia in 30 and 31. So we're going to be seeing SEC teams in Columbus in the next decade unless the SEC gets scared and backs out. Are you scared? Are you scared, SEC? Maybe if Ohio State beats Tennessee by too much in this game, they'll back out of them all. We don't want to go to the shoe. It's too scary. I don't know. They did. I do find it interesting. They did have a series with Tennessee and Ohio State scheduled in 2018 and 19 that they canceled in 2011. I can remember when that happened because I was so mad because I've been wanting the Big Ten to play the SEC and non-conference stuff forever. So it's finally happening. So here we are. That's the backdrop. Second meeting ever, Bill Landis. What do we think of the Ohio State offense versus the Tennessee defense in this game? It's good to see you, by the way, Bill. Sorry it's so long to get to you.
No,
Sorry.
it's okay. It's okay. I was actually listening to a little bit of Ryan Day's press conference while you guys were talking. So that was actually useful because we got some more information about Ohio State's offensive line. I guess we can start there as we break down the Ohio State offense against the Tennessee defense. Ohio State shuffling its offensive line yet again. This time not because of injury. This time I think because of
searching for goodness,
poor play, searching for a spark. I don't know how exactly Ryan Day might couch it. But see, I was pretty certain earlier in the week, like, okay, they're going to start Luke Montgomery, who is a second-year player, has never started before, had not played guard prior to this year, but has played about 70 or so snaps of guard this season, that he was going to start at left guard. And there was some ambiguity about the right guard spot with Tegra Shabola, who has started all 12 games, and Austin Sareveld, who has played on both sides of the line, has started at left guard, has played some right guard. But then Ryan Day said today, just a few minutes ago, that you might see rotation at both guard spots.
Great. That sounds like it's going to work great.
Yeah.
What a great plan.
So didn't love to hear it going up against this Tennessee defensive line, which I think a lot of people know about James Pierce, but it is a deep, athletic defensive line that, while probably stronger on the edges, has plenty of beef at defensive tackle as well. And I think the concern for anybody in this game, if you're thinking about it from the Ohio State perspective, is can Ohio State block Tennessee?
Yeah.
And I don't know how you'd have a ton of confidence in their ability to do so, given what we saw the last time Ohio State played against Michigan, and also now this possibility, if not extreme likelihood, that we're going to see Ohio State rotate guards in the first round of the playoff. I do not love where the Buckeyes are with that spot.
So it's like rock, paper, scissors on the sideline for who goes in each series. What do you think? What does that rotation look like?
Maybe they're going to do it old school style and use messenger guards to bring the plays in. And that's why they're doing this. Ohio State, which has huddled and played slow for no reason, which is another frustration people have had with this offense. Maybe they're going to be even slower and have Luke Montgomery, Austin Sareveld, and Tegra Shabola take turns running the play in from the sideline.
Messenger guards. And the thing about this, again, as people know, left tackle Josh Simmons and center Seth McLaughlin are the guys who got hurt. Were their two best offensive linemen. That kicked Donovan Jackson, their left guard, out the left tackle, and it forced Carson Hinsman, who probably would be one of those starting guards by now, to play center once McLaughlin got hurt. So if they were completely healthy right now, it would be Josh Simmons at left tackle, Donovan Jackson at left guard, Seth McLaughlin at center, probably Carson Hinsman at right guard by now, and Josh Fryer at right tackle. So we acknowledge this, that the guard fiasco was caused by the injuries at tackle and center. But also, you should be able to fix this.
You should be able
to, with Notre Dame. You should be able to fix this.
You should be able to fix it, or at the very least, like you shouldn't be still kind of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks now as you go into your third game without Seth McLaughlin, right? And it is a difficult thing to overcome, but that there's no clarity on it, I think, is the biggest issue. I mean, the quality of play is also an issue, but the search for answers persisting into the postseason is not a great spot for Ohio State to be in. Now that being said, I think there could be opportunities to scheme around it. Certainly they're going to have to do that. They can't show up on Saturday night in Ohio Stadium and try to do what they did against Michigan, which was it was a weird thing for the Michigan game because I think the way Michigan played defensively, maybe it made sense to run the ball because Michigan kind of played with a light box. They played with kind of split safeties a lot. Just that Ohio State's guards couldn't block Michigan's defensive tackles. So even
Right.
with a numbers advantage, oftentimes running the ball, it didn't matter because you couldn't block the two guys in the middle of the defensive line. I could see Tennessee playing it very similarly. It's a 4-down defense. Tim Banks, the defensive coordinator for Tennessee, was at Penn State for 3 years or 4 years, I think, 2016 to 2020, as a co-defensive coordinator under Brent Pry on James Franklin's staff. So he is familiar. I guess I would say he's familiar with like a Ryan Day passing game. The run game for Ohio State's a little different now with Chip Kelly calling it. But this will not be the first time that Tim Banks sees an Ohio State offense or an Ohio State offense that has very good receivers. So, and he's a smart guy who I'd imagine watched what Michigan did. Even what Oregon did. Oregon also kind of played with a lighter front and let its defensive line control things and tried to play some more coverage. Ohio State was still able to throw the ball in that game. It didn't throw the ball well at all against Michigan. But I'd imagine Tennessee is going to take a similar tact here. And that starts with Tennessee. Just like I would imagine really, really trusting its defensive line. And why wouldn't you in this matchup? It's the strength of the team. It is one of the better, probably overall units in this college football playoff, the Tennessee defensive line. So I don't know that Ohio State will necessarily take the bait this time and try to run into it the way it did against Michigan. But I would be surprised if that's not how Tennessee tries to play it. Ohio State needs to build its game plan around its receivers, and Ryan Day has acknowledged as much since the Michigan game without going like into full detail about what exactly that's going to look like. But I think we have a pretty good idea of what that might look like. I think it's a lot of quick passing, or it has to be a lot of quick passing to help protect this offensive line and keep Will Howard upright. Maybe we see an uptick in the percentage of screens that Ohio State throws. Ohio State has not been a big screen team all season. Maybe that is getting Jeremiah Smith involved in some different ways. I think we've mentioned on here before that Jeremiah Smith, the freshman receiver for Ohio State, very dynamic, has been mostly like a down the field target. His average depth of target is 13 yards. I think that's got to come down in this game. You have to get him the ball quickly and in space and let him run after the catch. Same with Emeka Egbuka, because I do think there are vulnerabilities in this Tennessee secondary once you get past Jermon McCoy, who is a very good cornerback. I think he's the best cornerback in this game, but the rest of Tennessee's secondary I don't think is as good as Ohio State's. So if you can find the time, I think there will be space available for Ohio State to throw the ball in this game.
I was on another show and they asked, is it possible that Ohio State would overcompensate and go too far the other way and throw it too much? And I said, it's not about throwing, it's about getting guys in space. However, you have to do that, right? So it's get on the perimeter, whether it's screens, whether it's jet sweeps, whether it's RPOs, whether it's bubble screens, whatever it is, you just have to let your dynamic guys make plays without relying on their guards to make blocks to allow them to make the plays.
Right.
Whether that's running up the middle or whether that is deep shots that Will Howard needs to be protected and you're not sure if the protection's going to hold up. That can't be what this game is about. And that's the whole point. That the Ohio State-Michigan game became about that. Became about Ohio State's greatest weakness on offense was the defining characteristic of that. Why? So this is, you said take the bait. So the whole thing is, right? Once you take the bait, then you're like, oh, that's bait. Yeah. I'm not going to take it anymore. So it's indefensible. They cannot take it. They've been hooked and dragged. It's a catch and release.
The hook set against Michigan is the problem.
But they didn't. But Michigan didn't eat them. Thrown more. Yeah. They tried to plant a flag, but they didn't fillet them. They threw them back in the pond, in the big old playoff pond. So when you see that worm, it's a light box. Oh, that worm! I said, listen, don't take it. And if you take it, then it's over. Then there's no excuse. Yeah. Right.
I 100% agree with that. Now, I don't think that Ohio State's going to throw the ball on every single play. So when you are presented with opportunities to run the ball, I think Ohio State probably has to run it a little differently too.
Yes.
It's been a big, I shouldn't say, I guess what I feel like when Ohio State's run game has run into problems, it is because like the inside zone rushing game like has not worked very well.
Okay.
For the season, though, they have been fairly balanced between gap and zone. I think if you like really dig into it, if you have the ability, like, counter plays have actually been quite productive for Ohio State. They just don't run them a ton. I think they average like 6.5 yards per carry on counter. And there have been times where they've like Chip Kelly's more like sprinkled it in more than he has like majored in it. And I am on alert for a subtle shift, I guess, maybe not so subtle shift in how Ohio State wants to run the ball here. I don't know. I was looking at like some of the underlying numbers for Tennessee's defense. I don't know that it makes a tremendous amount of difference whether you try to run zone or gap against them, because they're just very good up front and they're very good at linebacker against the run. But I think it's pretty clear that Ohio State is struggling, one, to run the ball in the interior, two, to like run inside zone and like double team and get up to the second level with their current configuration on the interior. So I don't know that means just start running sweeps, because Tennessee's got good speed too. But I do think you mix some of that in if you're Ohio State. Sweeps to the back, sweeps to the receivers. Maybe you put Emeka Egbuka in the backfield sometimes. I think you can put Jeremiah Smith in the backfield sometimes. I'm not saying hand him the ball off, but put them there and see if you can't get them matched up on a linebacker or safety if you send them out into the pattern. You're going to need a pretty creative game plan here from Ohio State, I think, to just make up for your deficiencies along the offensive line. I kind of think you'll get it because they have a lot of time to think about it. And their lack of creativity / adjusting really came back to bite them against Michigan. So they've learned a hard lesson there. But if they don't do that, if they just sort of like come out and say like, we're Ohio State, we have good players, we're going to out execute you like that, I think you're going to lose if you do that in your Ohio State.
Can they run option? Get what the expectation of Will Howard more involved in the run game, but get on the perimeter with him and one of those two backs.
Yeah, they have this this kind of like pause option play that they ran a couple times against Penn State. They ran it, I think, once against Michigan. They ran it maybe a time or two against Indiana. Every time they run it, it gets like 10 yards. But they've run it like 6 times all year. But I think so, yes. I think there's that. There's zone read option. There's design quarterback run game. They just, for as much talk as there was about Will Howard when Ohio State got him and his legs and the difference that might make for this offense, they have not run him a ton. And I'm not saying, like, I guess when they have run him, it's not like Will Howard has been awesome either, but it's clearly part of his skill set and they have to take advantage of it, especially in the red zone, especially in short yardage, but just like as a part of the base offense. I think Will Howard needs to be more involved as a designed runner and as a scrambler in this game, again, to help out the offensive line and just put a little more stress on that Tennessee defense.
We talked about it on the Monday show, but again, some real vulnerabilities in the secondary for Tennessee beyond the number one corner, especially maybe in the slot coverage over Emeka Egbuka.
Yeah. Middle of the field.
Middle of the field.
Yeah.
Quick throws in the middle of the field.
Carson Beck got him in the middle of the field quite a bit. I think Georgia, I didn't write it down. It was 12 targets, I think, to their tight ends in that game.
Okay.
Which for them is just like kind of targeting the slot receiver. But I also think Dominic Lovett out of the slot might have had 5 or 6 targets himself. There was a lot. It was like 200 is passing yards of the 300 and whatever it was that Carson Beck had in that game were in the middle of the field, like 2 tight ends or 2 slot receivers. And Taylor Green at Arkansas also, I think, found a lot of space in the middle of the field against Tennessee. I think that is Taylor Green's passing chart is actually hilarious from that game because there's just like nothing on the left side of the field, which is where I'm just assuming Jermon McCoy was. It's like the middle, and then deep shots to the right side of the field. So that's probably, what Will Howard has limitations as a passer, especially down the field. But he's been pretty good on these short to intermediate stuff. So I think it's a big Emeka Egbuka game. I don't know like who's the tight end that really like scares you as a passing weapon. I don't know the answer to that. Although G. Scott, like they did get him involved a little bit when they played Oregon. So maybe it's him. Maybe it's Will Kasmarek, the transfer from Ohio. Maybe it's a running back out of the backfield. Ohio State hasn't done a whole lot of that either. But yes, to your point, I think that if there is a place to attack, I think it is middle of the field, slot receiver kind of guys, slot receiver tight end kind of guys.
You also talked about Ohio State playing slow this year and that Tennessee plays fast. Should Ohio State play faster in this game? Get a little downhill with the quick throws up to the line. Here we go. And then maybe that's a chance where you can try to run the ball a little bit up the middle when you just get that downhill feeling with your offense?
I think so. I don't know if it's pushed the pace the entire time, although if you've watched Ohio State this season, they do tend to operate more efficiently when they play faster.
Yeah,
Ryan
their
Day
2-minute drill at the end of the half is often very good for them, and then they don't carry it over.
They do not. Yeah. I was at Ryan Day's press conference on Monday, Monday, and I asked them about that. Like why Ohio State has chosen to huddle so much to play. This is the slowest they've played under Ryan Day. They are among the slowest playing teams in the country. They have 63.3 yards per play, which ranks near the bottom in the country. Tennessee, meanwhile, is north of 70, closer to the top in college football. Ryan Day said they like to huddle. They like that Will Howard can look in the eye of the offensive lineman and communicate things to guys. And like I don't want to laugh that off entirely. I do think there's some merit to that, but they've just leaned way too far into it because every team that Ohio State plays, every single team Ohio State plays, the number one thing that is on their mind is limiting the number of plays that Ohio State's offense can run. And then Ohio State has made the decision itself to limit the number of plays that it runs. It just doesn't, it just runs counter, in my opinion, to like how they've built the roster and what Ohio State should be. So I think part of the slower pace was a bit of a means to an end to get to this point, to shorten the number of plays to like kind of stay healthier throughout the course of the season. So now you're here. So let's see you play faster. I think they have to do that. They have to be the aggressor. They can't, as we've said a couple of times, they can't let the other team, the defense in particular, like set the terms of the game. You are Ohio State. You have 3 Ferraris at the receiver position. Go use them, and you set the terms yourself. And if they do, like, I think that's a winning recipe here. I just, it would run counter to everything they've done all year.
We have talked about this a lot over the years with Ohio State, that in the Big Ten, it can feel like you need to be one kind of team to get through the Big Ten. And that might be a little more of a physical team. And then when you get to the postseason, now it doesn't apply this game because it's going to be in Ohio Stadium, but if it's indoors and better weather, you can let it rip offensively. But I would start that now. I would very much be in favor of Ohio State's offense coming out and looking nothing like it looked for the first 12 games of the season.
So would I. And I actually think there's a decent chance of that happening.
Yeah.
The way that Ryan Day termed it on Wednesday was maximizing their talents, which I think is coded language for Pepper Emeka Ibuka and Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate with as many targets as possible. And they don't all have to be passing targets. They can be rushing attempts. They can whatever you want. Like I think they will be creative and aggressive getting those 3 guys the ball as often as possible.
And throw it to the backs and throw it to Quinshon Judkins and Trevin Henderson so they don't have to rely on their guards to create a hole for them. I would just love for Ohio State, if they come out and Jeremiah Smith is in an offset H-back spot on the first play from scrimmage, it's on. They
have run
something.
They've lined up at tight end a couple times.
Let's go. Who's your tight end? Jeremiah Smith's our tight end.
Yeah.
He's big. We're going to throw him the ball 20 times.
He's big and fast. Yeah. So
he's big and fast.
I don't like, but I've said this all week to people who have asked me. It's like, I think all these ideas we can throw out are well and good. And I think Ohio State might have some pretty good ones. It could also be that your ideas were tremendous, but James Pierce was in Will Howard's face in 2 seconds and it didn't matter. Because we were talking a lot about the interior of Ohio State's offensive line and how things are shifting and how bad it was against Michigan. I don't know that I feel I don't feel great about the ability of Donovan Jackson and Josh Fryer, the 2 tackles, to block James Pierce in particular, but just more generally handle the speed and athleticism of Tennessee's defensive line. And it'll be a defensive line that is fresh, I think, for the entirety of the game. Tennessee has 11 defensive linemen who have played at least 150 snaps. Ohio State has 7. Against Alabama, which is Tennessee's biggest game of the year, 7 defensive linemen played at least 20 snaps. Against Michigan, Ohio State played as 4 starters, and that was it. So, this is a team that will roll its defensive line so that, I don't think there's an opportunity to wear Tennessee down necessarily. The way you do it is just like go over them, go over the top, wear them down with your passing game. You're not going to have a fourth quarter where you rush for 95 yards because Tennessee's defensive line is tired.
Yeah. But also, we've seen this over the years when Ohio State has guys like the Boses or Chase Young. What do teams do? They get the ball in the hands of the quarterback very quickly. So there are vulnerabilities in the Tennessee secondary. Throw away from the number 1 corner, get the ball out of Will Howard's hands, get it to their 5 playmakers, and go. And I feel like I can hear the edge in my voice. There's no excuse for the Ohio State offense to not play great in this game.
Yes.
There is none. I don't they couldn't block. There's none. There's none. There's none. When you're Ryan Day and you're Chip Kelly and you have these receivers and these backs and you brought in Will Howard in the transfer portal, the fact that 2 of your offensive linemen got hurt cannot be a throw your hands in the air. Oh, well, our offense died. Mm-hmm. There's none. I don't care if it's 0 degrees and 40-mile-per-hour winds. I don't care if it's 110 degrees. Ohio State's offense has to go win this game. Mm-hmm. And if it can't, then what are they doing?
Yeah. And it's not going to be, I agree with everything you said. I just don't want it to come off as if like assuming that'll be easy. Because I think you could make a case that this is the best defense Ohio State has played this year.
Agreed.
So like here are the 5 categories I looked at: scoring, yards per play, third down percentage, red zone touchdown percentage, and the Brian Fremeau drive efficiency metric. Tennessee is top 5 in all of them on defense. So like this is, and Ohio State's not top 5. And Ohio State's offense is top 5 in a couple of them, but not all of them. So Penn State has a good defense. Michigan has a good defense. Oregon has a good defense. I at least from a defensive line perspective, overall talent, I think Tennessee is better than any of what those teams showed Ohio State. And maybe the secondary is a little more vulnerable, but the speed element of it, I think, could be something a little different from what Ohio State has experienced this year.
Okay, I'm sorry I got mad.
No, I hear it in my voice too, just because like it's. We're in Columbus. We hear a lot of it from Ohio State fans, and they're not off base with their criticisms of the offense, but it is just a little maddening sometimes that Ohio State doesn't try to be the aggressor, and I think it definitely needs to be here.
Okay, let's flip it. Let's talk about the Tennessee offense versus the Ohio State defense, and the Tennessee offense is a fraud. Whoops. Did I mean to say that right off the top? So Tennessee came out and just dropped some 70 bombs on people early in the season. Mm-hmm. They played their 4 non-conference games and their 2 games against Mississippi State and Vanderbilt, which are 2 bad defenses, right? Those 6 games, Nico Iamaleava, the second-year player, the first-year starter for Tennessee at quarterback, he, in those games, was sacked 4 times in 6 games. They averaged 53 points per game in those 6 games. He was 15 of 22, 80% completions for 240 yards per game. Okay? In those against the 6 bad defenses. Again, the big point there is 53 points per game. In the 6 real games they played, and also, by the way, he threw 16 touchdowns against 2 picks in those 6 games. Okay? 4 non-conference, and then Vanderbilt, Mississippi State. In their other 6 games, their other 6 SEC games against good to medium defenses, he threw 3 touchdown passes and 3 interceptions. That's compared to 16-2. He was sacked 20 times. That's compared to 4 times. They averaged 22 points per game compared to 53 points per game. And he completed 62% of his passes compared to 80%. And he threw for 179 yards per game compared to 240 yards per game. So guess what? This is one of the good defenses with Ohio State. So everything about Tennessee is A, tempo. They play fast. And B, these wide splits with the receivers. Oh, my God, the wide splits. Oh, my God, you can't talk about Tennessee without talking about wide splits. They get their receivers really wide, right? And it spreads the defense out. And then, like, if you, for instance, watch the Vanderbilt game where Nico threw 4 touchdown passes in the last game of the regular season, they run play action to Dylan Sampson, who was their running back, who was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year. So everybody's afraid of him. They run play action. The linebackers and the safeties suck up, and then these wide splits, they get in one-on-one coverage and run in breaking routes, and there's nobody there. It looked like Vanderbilt was playing with 9 guys on defense in half those games, and it's like, oh, look at Nico slicing them up. It was horrible pass defense. When it is amazing to me, and I get they're stressing you like that, but also, I don't know, man. It's not like they're playing with 3 quarterbacks at the same time. Figure out the wide splits. I have the edge in my voice again. Oh, my God, Landis. I'm so mad about this game already.
I actually think it's going to be a pretty tough test for Ohio State defensively.
Why? Why?
Because I don't. Because you have to make a choice. You have to make a choice. Caleb Downs said this on Tuesday. Caleb Downs, Ohio State safety, who was at Alabama last year and played against Tennessee. You have to make a choice to stop the run or the pass. It's hard to do both against Tennessee. He said Tennessee makes your secondary and your front play two different games, which I thought was like a really, really interesting way to put it. Georgia did a nice job against Tennessee because Georgia played with a light box, 5-6 guys, and their defensive line and linebackers were able to control that enough for them to win that game. Do you trust Ohio State to do that?
Yes,
you trust
I do.
Ohio State. You trust Ohio State's defensive line, which has been underwhelming for 3 years at least, to win up front consistently and allow Ohio State to play coverage in a way that doesn't leave Denzel Burke and Davis Igbinosun and Jordan Hancock susceptible to getting burned on in-breaking routes all day?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not all the way there.
By PFF grades, of the 78 offensive linemen in the playoff who have played at least 20% of their snaps this year, 78. Tennessee's right tackle is 76th. Tennessee's left tackle is 77th. Lance Hurd at left tackle, John Campbell at right tackle. I know they are very experienced. Hurd's a transfer in this year. Cooper Mays at center. Cooper Mays and Seth McLaughlin are probably the two best centers in college football. They were 2 of the 3 finalists for the Remington that Seth McLaughlin, the injured Ohio State center, won. Cooper Mays is great. I think the rest of this offensive line is vulnerable. And when you have all these guys for Ohio State who stayed and didn't go to the NFL, if JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer and Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton can't win these matchups against a mid-offensive line, then what are we doing? And Dylan Sampson is good. Dylan Sampson is good as a running back. He is very good. He will break tackles. Cody Simon and Sonny Styles have to make tackles. I don't know what to tell you. Your linebackers have to tackle, and your front four has to win against a mid-offensive line and let these guys cover. Now, I'm very curious about what Caleb Downs winds up doing. Do you want Caleb Downs down involved in the run game a lot? Or do you want him back helping in the pass game a lot? But the other thing that you've said a lot this year, Caleb Downs and Lathan Ransom, the two Ohio State safeties, had great years. So they might be stressed. But this Jim Knowles, when he got to Ohio State, said this, I hear it in my voice again. Why am I so mad about this? On behalf of the North, I am angry that it doesn't feel that Ohio State has to win this game. Tennessee is second tier. Ohio State is top tier in its conference. Ohio State has to win this game. This is a safety-driven defense when Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator, got here. They have 2 great safeties. They're stressed? Great. You want stress on Lathan Ransom and Caleb Downs because you think they can handle it. So when Vanderbilt is leaving the middle of the field wide open, I believe in the Ohio State safeties to handle this. Jim Knowles, it's why he's here. He said he built this defensive scheme to handle tempo. It's why he's here. This is the game he was put at in Columbus to scheme up, and they have everything they need. And I don't think the Tennessee receivers are great. They're not great. When they were chucking around 2 years ago with Hendon Hooker and they had Jalen Hyatt and some of these guys, like they were more dangerous. Their receivers are fine. Dante Thornton has averages 25 yards per catch. He's a deep, I get it.
He worries me. On the slant. He worries me in this game if I'm Ohio State.
So I get it.
Big guy runs fast.
But he also has 25 catches the whole year. Right? He's a little bit like Evan Stewart to me, which is the Oregon guy.
What did Evan Stewart do against Ohio State?
He killed Ohio State, but Evan Stewart has had 3 good games this year for Oregon and 9 games where he wasn't a factor at all. So then did you learn? Are they going to take the bait again? Did Ohio State learn from Evan Stewart undressing Denzel Burke in that game? Can they put themselves in a situation when Dante Thornton, I get it, Squirrel White and Brew McCoy are fine. By the way, all 3 of them are hurt to varying degrees, and we're wearing non-contact jerseys at practice this week for Tennessee, according to the great Tennessee coverage that I read. Shout out to all the beat reporters who make it all possible for people to sit in front of a mic and yell about college football. There's not an All-American at receiver. I get they're going to spread you out. These are NFL guys in the Ohio State secondary. These are NFL guys on the front 4 of Ohio State. If they cannot win these individual matchups, then what are we doing? The Tennessee offense is fine. It is not great. And Nico Iamaleava is a young quarterback still. They run 59% of his throws are play action. The next most in the playoff is 44%. Play action is designed to help your quarterback. It sucks the defense down. It allows him to set his feet, make a read, right? They rely on that. So don't get sucked down. Don't take the bait. I think they have to play back, play light boxes, rely on the front four and the linebackers to tackle Sampson. If Sampson does some things, okay. Do not allow these big plays down the field. And if the Ohio State secondary can't do that, then what are we doing?
I think you're right. When's the last time we watched a game where Ohio State's defensive line won its one-on-one matchups?
But I don't think they have to pressure Nico. I think they have to stop the run.
Oh, I do.
Hold the edge. I think if they, I don't love Nico. I don't know. I think he's okay. I think if they play good coverage and he's sitting back there looking at it, again, do you think they need to blitz a lot in this game? Do you think Ohio State will blitz a lot, or is it keep the guys back, not take those risks, and rely on the front four?
I don't know. I don't know what the right course of action is.
Why am I so mad?
Because you can tell me, I have concerns about the defensive line and the secondary, and it's not like concerns like, oh, they're secretly bad. It's just like Ohio State's defensive line has not been dominant. That's why Ohio State has blitzed more since it played Oregon, because the defensive line couldn't get to Dylan Gabriel. And there's really not been a game against a good opponent in the last, basically since Chase Young left, that the defensive line just got after it, and you didn't have to worry about them, right? Like that. If you're going to tell me Ohio State's going to flip that switch in this game against Tennessee, then yeah, definitely. Then you let those guys go eat. You let Sonny Styles and Cody Simon make tackles behind them, and then you're good to go because you can play coverage in the back end. Ohio State has had to divert extra resources to get pressure on quarterbacks and has left their corners on islands. And I don't know. I'm not saying that the cornerbacks definitely aren't up to that task. And I also don't think Tennessee's receivers are as good as Oregon's, not nearly as good.
No, agree.
But they're pretty athletic, and like Dante Thornton again is 6'5" and runs really well. He's an Oregon transfer, by the way, funnily enough. I just don't know. I don't know if they're going to be able to hold up the entire game, I guess. Jim Knowles is pretty confident, though. Jim Knowles was like talking on Tuesday. He did say, like, you know, his system was built for this. He said when he was at Duke with David Cutcliffe challenged him to have the fastest play calling defense in the country to, at that time, counter teams that were playing fast, and he did, and they were successful. It got him the Oklahoma State job and ultimately got him to Ohio State. Ohio State just doesn't see a lot of offenses that operate this way. The pace and the space. They get teams that'll space them out, like Marshall spaced them out, Nebraska spaced them out. They didn't play fast. Everyone Ohio State plays slow. Even if they are a fast-playing team, they play slow against Ohio State. The exception, I guess, this year was Oregon, which actually sped it up a little bit, and that gave Ohio State problems. Ohio State had a hard time getting lined up against Oregon. They've since changed some things, I think, about how they communicate to make sure that doesn't happen again. But we don't know if that's fixed. They haven't played a team that would stress that yet. So I don't even want to call it concern. Like, my thought on this matchup, this side of the ball, is like less about the talent for Tennessee and more about the style and just how equipped Ohio State is to actually handle it. Because I think it's tough with the way that they space you out and then play fast and how they run the ball. They lead the SEC in rushing while playing, like, schematically, structurally more of like an air raid style kind of system, but they really want to run the ball, and they trust that they're going to be able to get advantageous matchups. They run the ball into a light box more than almost anybody in the country. 66% of their rushing attempts are into 4 to 6 man boxes. And that's what they're going to bet on against Ohio State. So if you think the defensive line is going to play really well, and Sonny Styles and Cody Simon are going to tackle, and Cody Simon, I think, has been very good since the Oregon game, and Sonny Styles has been much better over the course of the season. All of that is plausible. All that is possible. I just don't know how you can 100% bank on it, especially with the defensive line, because I don't know that we've seen that from Ohio State.
I just can't live in a world where Ohio State's like, man, we couldn't cover Squirrel White. Well, I mean, who can cover Squirrel White? Squirrel White, 33 catches on 52 targets, 364 yards, 2 touchdowns this year. Brew McCoy, 35 catches on 58 targets, 432 yards, 2 touchdowns this year. Dante Thornton, 25 catches on 33 targets, 649 yards, 6 touchdowns this year. I don't know, man. It's just like
he leads the country in 60 or 50-yard receptions. He has 6 of them.
I get it. He has 3 100-yard games, and he has 6 games of 43 yards or fewer. The Evan Stewart comparison. So, are you going to take the bait? Figure it out. I just don't like. I don't. The main thing is I understand your questions, but there's nothing Ohio State lacks here. From an experience perspective, from a recruiting pedigree perspective, there's not, I thought Ohio State coming into the year had a chance to have the best secondary in the country, right? Cody Simon at middle linebacker has had a better year than anybody expected. Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau are 2 5-star recruits in their 4th seasons. Tyleik Williams is going to be a 2nd-round pick at defensive tackle. If these guys can't win these matchups, then what are we doing? Lance Hurd has been very iffy at left tackle for them. Very iffy. So this is not Oregon with Cornelius and Connolly at the tackle spots. There are tackle vulnerabilities here. Win those individual matchups, play coverage, tackle the running back who's good, but they held Caleb Johnson down when they played Iowa for much of that game. Before,
but they can play with 9 guys in the box against Iowa. It's not the same thing. Like that. Like there is a trend, yes, with Ohio State football when they play a team that has a really good running back. It usually doesn't matter because those teams can't throw the ball. Those teams don't have a strong-armed, athletic quarterback. Those teams don't spread you out. They play the game at a phone booth and they play slow. That's not what Tennessee is going to do. I don't think like what Ohio State did against Caleb Johnson, what Ohio State's done against any number of Wisconsin running backs. Is can be applied to this game. It's a totally different dynamic.
I'm so mad we're fighting.
I don't think we're fighting. I think
up.
I don't know. I think you're doing a little bit of what you criticize people for doing against Oregon.
And I do, but I think Oregon is much better than Tennessee.
Sure. I don't disagree with that.
But also, I think it's really more about the spot to me. So I thought going out to Oregon, playing an undefeated team in their place with all the talent that Oregon has, for people to have looked at that game and thought that Oregon was like Penn State, I thought was like, what are you talking about? Oregon is awesome. Please have respect for Oregon. With a veteran 60-year quarterback and Tez Johnson and 2 great tackles, right? Please respect Oregon. The spot here, it is indefensible to me for what Ohio State was expected to be this year, to be in a position where they're hosting Tennessee when this is not maximum skill Tennessee. Dylan Sampson's very good. It is not maximum offensive line Tennessee. I get it. This is a team that lost to Arkansas. They have a win over Alabama. I get it, but Alabama kind of was weird this year and had some really bad games. I thought Alabama lost that game probably as much as Tennessee won it. It is the holistic expectation. So I think you are correct to push back and make sure that I am not underestimating Tennessee's individual talent. I'm just saying from a big picture perspective, if Ohio State can't beat Tennessee, then what are we doing? Whereas I thought if you can't beat Oregon, what do you mean you can't beat Oregon? At Oregon, when they're the best team in the country? Yeah, you can't beat Oregon. That's very sensible. And even to go to Penn State this year, when this is like Penn State with a quarterback and a great defense and a great new play caller, if like I had more respect for Penn State in that spot and that situation, right? I picked Ohio State to win that game, but it's like, okay, there's some stuff. Tennessee, for real? I get it. James Pierce, I get it. This is not 2022 Georgia. This is not insurmountable. So, but you think I am perhaps underestimating what Tennessee does well?
I think you may be overestimating Ohio State's defensive ability.
So Godfrey was just down and said he thinks Ohio State is the best defense in the playoff. You and I have talked and thought Texas probably has the best defense in the playoff. Ohio State's in that mix. Are you more? But again, like to me,
or maybe I should say more specifically, I think you're maybe overestimating Ohio State's defensive line,
which is a problem. If aren't these guys are all going to be where Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, and Tyleik Williams going to be picked? They might be all top 50 picks.
Yeah, round 2, 3. Yeah.
So like, how is that not good enough?
It should be. If you think it should be, I'm right there with you. It's like for me, it's like I need to see it. We just have not seen that kind of game from these guys. I think we've seen some individual performances from Tyleik Williams like that, right? And we've seen like the JTT Penn State game, right, a couple of years ago. Jack Sawyer has been a solid player, but I don't think I don't know if any of these guys are dominant players. And I
agree
think
with that. You're right.
I think they need to be. I think they need to be dominant in this game. And to your point, like the Tennessee offensive line is not great. Ohio State should be dominant in this game, but I'm talking defensively. I don't know. It's hard for me to be super confident that they will be.
Okay.
And I just like there are things here that I think Ohio State's not used to seeing that could take some time to adjust.
Look at us talking ball. How can you not be talking about the playoff on every show? Some people are talking so much about the portal and stuff. The playoff is happening. What are we doing? We understand that the schedule is a jackhole schedule. We get it.
Yeah.
But it's the playoff. It's more important than the portal. The playoff is more important than the portal. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to yell about Penn State SMU because Penn State has to beat SMU. Two things have to happen in this playoff for our show. Ohio State has to beat Tennessee, and Penn State has to beat SMU. Everything else after that is whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I can't wave my sword around for 4 months and then watch Tennessee and SMU march north and take out 2 Northern Blue Bloods, Landis.
I know. I don't want it to happen either. And we're not making picks. We're just talking. We're talking stuff out. And I think it's important to get everything on the table. We'll make our picks tomorrow. But yeah, we need Ohio State and Penn State to win. We can't lose in Notre Dame, Indiana. We can just get fired up about that one and enjoy it. But yeah, we need Ohio State and Penn State to win.
All right, quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the coaches just a little bit, and then we're going to get into Whatcha, and we'll bring it back down. I have props for Whatcha. My wife brought me a prop.
Oh, wow.
She's the best. All right, quick break. Back on KOTN. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis, poolpartygaming.com. The bracket is still open, right? Because the playoff bracket, first game's Friday. You guys know that by now. You can do that. You can just get the bracket in by Friday. But we're doing a bowl pool and a bracket and then combining them. So our first bowl game was last night, Bill. Memphis, West Virginia, and we are picking those games against the spread. Mm-hmm. And it is a live line. So when you make your pick, it is locked in, but the line moves just like it does on a betting app. So West Virginia lost by 5, and depending when you got them, you might have pushed on that game because they were getting 5, or you might have lost or won with Memphis because also that line was 4.5 at times. How exciting is that?
It would have been great if I had the right side, but I pushed because I got it. I got it at 5. I also missed on the total. I took the under.
So did I. So we blew it. So you guys can come beat us. More than 500 people we got so far. And again, if you missed that first one, just like Landis and I didn't win anything either, you can still get in. Mm-hmm. So come get in. Poolpartygaming.com. Find it. We're all over the homepage and join. It's not too late. It's not too late. Just join. Who cares if you missed the first game? Just join. Mike, did you hit it? Producer Mike, were you all over it?
So I pushed on the spread and I hit the over.
Nice.
I will say, just going forward, my goal is to bet the over for every one of these games because life's too short to bet the under.
Oh, I agree with that. That's good advice from Producer Mike. Producer Mike also letting us know that Caden Salter, the Liberty transfer quarterback, has committed to Colorado. He had also visited Syracuse. So we're glad the North got this guy, but we talked about needing bridges to these young quarterbacks. Who's Michigan going to get as a bridge? Who is Colorado going to get as a bridge to Juju Lewis? Caden Salter and Connor Wegman were 2 guys that we liked theoretically for Syracuse. Connor Wegman committed to Houston, now Salter to Colorado. This is a good get by Deion Sanders, but Syracuse has to find somebody, but this is pretty good. This is pretty good for the Buffaloes, right?
Yeah, I like Caden Salter. He was in the portal last year too, and then I think decided to go back to Liberty. Obviously stuck with the portal this time around. Athletic, got a strong arm. I think it'll be a pretty good bridge to Juju Lewis.
Okay, let's talk Ryan Day, Josh Heupel real quick before we get to
sorry to interrupt you, but I do think I'm looking at the pool party gaming. I think we get half a point for pushing on the spread.
For the push. Oh,
yeah, I got a half
So
point. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm at 1.5. You guys are at a half. So yeah, so push isn't the worst thing. So you get a half point. That's even better. Yeah.
Half a point
Partial
for
credit.
Doug. I'll take it. So again, come join us at poolpartygaming.com. Over 500 folks in there. Ryan Day versus Josh Heupel. Let me ask you a question, Bill. So there was all this time. By the way, USC is exploding. All their players are leaving. The program's on fire. There was a time when Ryan Day and Lincoln Riley were compared a lot as these sort of quarterback whisperer, offensive gurus that became head coaches. Is it possible that the guy who actually emerges from this is Josh Heupel as the quarterback whisperer or offensive guru? Day and Heupel are very similar. Day, 45 years old. Heupel, 46. Heupel's in year 7 as a head coach overall. He was at UCF before Tennessee. Day's in year 6. Heupel is 65-22. Ryan Day is 66-10. Heupel is from Aberdeen, South Dakota, and talked about that like, hey, we're coming to Columbus. This is like a June day in South Dakota, what we're going to get. So he's making northern jokes. We're all in favor of that. Played at Oklahoma. Played some other places and transferred there. Ryan Day from New Hampshire, played at New Hampshire. So this is kind of crazy, Bill, that these guys are around the same age. They're both former quarterbacks. They're from South Dakota and New Hampshire, of all places, and here we are. But I feel like Ryan Day, when everybody does like the preseason, who are the best coaches lists, Ryan Day and Lincoln Riley have been high on those lists for years. I don't know that anybody ever thought about Josh Heupel in the same category. I never did. But this guy, if he wins this one, like, what's up? Because they made a run a couple years ago, and if Hendon Hooker hadn't gotten hurt 2 years ago, they might have made the 4-team playoff back then.
He's done a really nice job there. I caught the end of your conversation with Godfrey where he talked about that Heupel was a bridge coach, or at least seemed like when he got hired. I definitely thought that. I thought that was Danny White making a familiar hire just to get Tennessee a coach so we could go find a better coach. And then Josh Heupel, I think, really outperformed expectations and continues to do so. So he's done a nice job there. He's a good offensive mind, obviously. He is one of 3 head coaches, by the way, in this playoff who are the primary offensive play callers. It is Josh Heupel, Steve Sarkisian, and Rhett Lashley are the 3 who are their team's primary play callers in this playoff. I meant to say that when we did the breakdowns on Monday, and I forgot, so I'm saying it now. I think he is rising up those rankings. Like when we see them next year, I think he'll get a nice bump. Kind of regardless, I think, of what happens in this game, but certainly if Tennessee pulls off a win here.
You are going to this game on Saturday night. Is it possible that you will come away from this after watching the Tennessee offense live and think to yourself, why doesn't everybody have wide splits?
No, not necessarily. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's fun. It's like, it's the kind of what did Jim Knowles said, like, it's like the spread offense run the way that it was intended to be run, which I thought was an interesting way to put it. Yeah, but like spread to run, not spread to throw. So like I like it. I like the schematic advantage it gives you if you can get an offensive line and the running back who can do what Tennessee's guys do. But I don't think that's always a guarantee. But Josh Heupel, like earlier this year, like pushed back pretty hard on his offense being labeled an air raid offense. They do run the ball. They run the ball 60% of the time. So he's right. They line up like an air raid team, but then they want to run it through the middle of your defense.
Yeah. Okay. I need to relax. You ready to relax a little bit?
Yeah.
I'm shouting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do what you're watching, what you're eating, what you're thinking. What are you watching, Bill Landis?
I watched most of Elf. I didn't quite finish it, but I watched.
You didn't wait for the exciting conclusion. You don't know what happened.
I was watching it like this morning as I was preparing for the show, and then I had to stop at noon. So I think I might have had like 10 or 15 minutes left, but I liked it. It was good so far. I guess I
watch it right now.
I guess I need to finish it. Yeah, like I don't know. It's fine. It's watchable. Like it is an enjoyable Christmas movie. I don't know. I don't think as I was watching it, it was like vaulting up my list of favorite Christmas movies, but I get why people like it. Yeah.
Santa. I know him.
Yeah.
How about when he hit the cotton balls? Did you laugh when he hit the cotton balls?
I did laugh when he hit the cotton balls. Yeah. And I did like the first, I guess like once he initially leaves the North Pole and then he's like wandering around New York, it was like Coming to America for 15 minutes. And I like Coming to America. So I was glad it reminded me of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel slightly underwhelmed. I built it up too much, didn't I?
No, I just think like, yeah, I just if you were someone who experienced it like when it came out, I understand the emotional, sentimental attachment to that movie. But it's been out for what 15 years now, and like I'm just watching it for the first time. I'm watching it for the first time, sort of like knowing enough about it that it, like nothing really is like, oh, that's interesting, or everyone's like it was. I've basically seen it without seeing it by this point, so it was just a different viewing experience.
You sit on a throne of lies? No.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good line. That's a good line.
Yeah,
that's a good line. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's not how I thought that was going to go.
Sorry.
Hey, what'd you watch? Oh, by the way, I watched Elf partly. What? Okay, I'm fine. So I watched this movie on a plane called Thelma, and I think it came out this year. And it is about a woman who gets scammed, an old woman who gets scammed on the phone, and then goes about trying to get her money back from the people who scammed her. And there's a lot of a 90-year-old woman riding a scooter through the streets of Los Angeles trying to get her money back. And it was very, very, very good. And my sister saw it months ago when it came out, and she said, you would really like this. And part of it is the old woman reminds me of my mom a little bit, but it's just like old, like just like vivacious old folks, because I hope to be a vivacious old person. Well, I might be right now, eventually. And have you heard of this movie? It's not Thelma and Louise. It's just Thelma.
I have not heard of this movie. No.
Yeah.
No.
I would recommend it. And I
Who's
do
in
want to, what's her name? June Squibb is the woman who plays the older woman. And Richard Roundtree, who passed away after the movie was filmed, is like her old sidekick. Shaft. Yeah. And then Clark Gregg and Parker Posey are like the middle-aged people in it. If you like a little Parker Posey in your life.
Yeah. So, who doesn't like Parker Posey?
Yeah. So
that guy. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he's like in the Marvel movies. So I want to do thinking first because I have a prop for eating. So can I slide into this? So can I ended up like since our show on Thursday, I ended up going on a bunch of flights, and I want to. I know you would say you would characterize your what do you think of flying?
I used to be very afraid of it. I've since gotten a little better about that. For me now, it's more of a comfort situation. I'm a larger individual. Like being shoved into a regular airplane seat for more than like an hour is like gives me anxiety to the point where like usually when I fly, as long as I'm not bankrupting myself, I try to get a first class seat or at the very least like a main cabin extra kind of situation.
Yeah. Okay. So I just wondered about this. I want to create, maybe somebody's already done this, but I think I feel the most grounded in my life as a person right before you take off on a plane, because you're a little bit nervous, right? Everybody's at least a little bit nervous, but it's completely out of your hands. There's nothing you can do. And I wind up like, I think, doesn't everybody say like a kind of a little prayer when you're taking off on a plane? Right? Everybody does some kind of version of that, right?
It's the most nervous I am in the flying experiences during takeoff.
Yeah. So everyone ends up talking to the big guy right at takeoff, right? So, but what I wind up doing is just being very grateful for everything I've had in my life and the things that I've been able to do, because now you're embarking on something which of course is going to go fine, but it's completely out of your hands, right? And I feel like in the moment, being grateful for your life, a little worried, but realizing that kind of it's not about you is a very grounding experience. And I want to adopt that philosophy every day, because isn't life like a flight, Landis? And you wake up in the morning, and maybe you're a little bit nervous about what's going on, but you can be very grateful about what you have in your life. And then, of course, I believe in free will, but there are certainly things in your life that are out of your hands, right? And then also, once you take off, you experience the miracle of flight, right? Like, what is happening? But isn't every day a miracle that we're on this earth doing this that we exist is in itself a miracle. So treat every day like a flight. And every time you get out of bed, act like you're taking off into your day. And you're grateful and you're grounded and you realize some of it's out of your hands, but you are experiencing the miracle of life every day. That's my new official philosophy. If you would like to partake in it for $19.99, you can go to my website. Life is a flight, and I will now be your life coach. Life is a flight, Landis, and I'm going to turn it into a multi-million-dollar business.
I like that. I'm going to try to do that for myself the next time I fly, which will be in a couple weeks, I guess, to go to the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I get super nervous. I get like my watch is like, you good? Like it sends me a message.
Oh yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Are you running a marathon right now?
Just flying. Yeah, no, I'm fine. Just flying. That's good. That's good perspective. I'll have to keep that in mind. But I like that as I like applying it to life too, not just when you're nervous.
Yeah. Because normally I'm not grateful at all. I'm just running around like a maniac yelling at people. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I need to apply this. And I suppose there are probably a million people out there who are like, yeah, I practice gratitude every day, you stupid giant elf. And it's like, I just figured it out at age 51 on a plane over the weekend. What is wrong with me? But anyway, I figured it out. What are you thinking about?
This is not a sponsored thinking, but I want to give I guess like a plug or whatever so we were at the Philadelphia over the weekend to see my family for the holidays, and the last few times I've gone to Philly, it's a weird situation because like only one of my brothers lives there now. My dad lives in New Jersey, and he usually like commutes to the city and stays in a hotel when we're there. My other brother lives in Connecticut, and my brother who lives in the city just like doesn't really have the space for all of us to stay there, especially with a 2-year-old. So for a long time I was staying, or with a baby. So for a long time I was staying in hotels, but the last few times I've gone, we've stayed in. It's called Sonder, and it's like a cross between a hotel and an Airbnb. I don't always love an Airbnb, like especially like lived in Airbnbs. Like the fact like staying in someone's house where they live is like very odd to me. There are people who have like property specifically for Airbnb, which is a little different. But Sonder kind of like meets in the middle. And there's a bunch of them in Philly. They're not everywhere. They're in more than a handful of cities across the US. I think like most major cities, and then some overseas as well. But I find them to be incredibly cost efficient too, compared to a lot of hotels and Airbnbs. And you can still get like the Airbnb feel of having like a living room and separate rooms and multiple bathrooms. Like we had like a full kitchen when we were in Philly for a couple of days too. So it was nice. It was like a different approach to like finding a place to stay that I don't know that people are necessarily aware of, but I've like very much enjoyed the last few times I've done it. I've stayed in ones that are more like a hotel room where it's just like all one room, and we stayed in one here in Philly this past weekend, which was like a 2-bedroom condo. That was nice too, and it helps you avoid sort of like the awkwardness, or at least like the awkward feeling that I feel sometimes when I stay in an Airbnb that I know is someone's home. So if there's anyone else out there who feels like me when they do that, I would recommend a Sonder if you're in a city that has them.
So it feels like a house, but not a lived-in house.
It feels more, like an apartment. It's not. They're not homes. They're usually high rises that have different types of rooms in them. But yeah, it's like you go to like a, what do you call it, like a Residence Inn Marriott, which is like meant to feel like an apartment, but you still kind of feel like you're in a hotel room. This is set up like that, but it feels more like you're in someone's apartment or condo than you are in an actual hotel room.
Nice. Lovely. All right. That's a good suggestion. And if they do want to sponsor us, that'd be great.
They sure can. Yeah.
What are you eating? Eat some good Philly stuff?
We didn't go out a ton because we were just like with family mostly. I did eat some good stuff, but I promised my brother, who listens to the show, listens and watches the show, that I would talk about the pulled. He was going to make pulled pork sandwiches, but then he ended up making like a pulled barbecue beef situation on Friday night when my full family was over his house for dinner, and they were very good. He accidentally. He tried to make like a barbecue sauce, like a vinegar-based barbecue sauce that I don't think quite turned out the way he wanted to, but he accidentally, I think, fell into something that was pretty tasty. It was almost like a spicy kind of pulled beef sandwich. And I don't know everything that was in there. There was like some brown sugar in the mix, some kind of spices as well. But he kind of threw down. He made those, and he made some homemade mac and cheese. And it was a lovely meal with my brothers and my father and and my stepmother and our children and my sisters-in-law. So it was a very nice Friday night spent in the city of Philadelphia with some delectable beef sandwiches made by my brother.
A fan of all the pulled meats, but did he actually say to you, "This better be what you eating"?
He said, yeah. He said, "Are you going to talk about this on What You Eating?" And I said, "Yeah." It was the best thing I had. It was the best thing I had to eat when I was in Philly over the weekend. Yeah.
How about that? Aspirational for people getting on What You Eating. All right, so I have props for What You Eating.
Okay.
Because I want to make a point. Okay. My wife went to Wendy's for me.
When? How old is this Wendy's?
She went like half an hour ago. I've been planning this for weeks because I want to make a point.
Okay.
And I've been very careful about when I make this point because I understand there are associations that some people have with. I literally cannot get the lid off this thing with people. Okay. Okay, so she brought this back for me. Can you guys see this?
Yeah, sauce nugs.
Okay, this is the sauce nugs. Okay. What is the frickin' deal here? Because here's the thing. I think Wendy's has not purposefully, but forcefully made a point that I have been arguing against for years, because the people who only like buffalo wings and don't like boneless buffalo wings say boneless buffalo wings are just chicken nuggets, right? Mm-hmm. And I like boneless buffalo wings. But now I am here to say boneless buffalo wings are not just chicken nuggets, because boneless buffalo wings do not look like this. This is actually chicken nuggets with buffalo sauce dumped on them. And my question is, how desperate do you have to be for buffalo sauce to get these? Because there are buffalo wings restaurants all over the place. Because it does matter the formation of the boneless wing. It's not like boneless wings are not stamped like that, right? Mm-hmm. They're more organic. You can see it's not just the sauce. Yeah. So I definitively, the question has been answered. No, boneless buffalo wings are not just nuggets, because now we have what just nuggets with buffalo sauce looks like. And this is not boneless wings. Nobody would argue this. And I love so much about Wendy's. I do not know why they had to go here. Don't go outside your area. They do so many things well. They took some of their salads away in a way that I didn't like. I like some of their salads. I am dumbfounded by this. And I know they sponsor a bunch of shows, and I'm not doing this because they don't sponsor our show. What is this, Landis? Who does this appeal to?
I don't know. I don't like them. I had them one time. I thought they sucked.
Okay, I was trying to soft shoe this a little bit because I didn't know.
Why? They don't sponsor our show.
Okay, they blow.
They sponsor Ari's. I don't care if they sponsor Ari's show. The spice sauce nugs suck. I'll say it.
Sauce nugs suck. I have been so careful to not ever do this when Ari has guested on our show. I don't want to get him in trouble.
Yeah,
they suck. The first time I had him and I got him in a drive-thru, it's like, oh, I'll try these things. I couldn't believe it. It is just their nugget, and somebody in the back is pouring buffalo sauce on it. You can do this at your house.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just need, I sometimes get a real craving for buffalo sauce. I always satisfy it. I don't need to go to Wendy's, home of a lovely single hamburger. I like their fries. I like their spicy chicken sandwich, because their spicy chicken sandwich is not just a chicken sandwich with sauce dumped on it. It's right. Spicy in the breading. I don't know what this is, and that they are pushing this hard is crazy to me. Nobody can think these are good, right? Are we going to get sued? We're not going to get sued. We're just saying this is not what we enjoy. Wendy's, stay in your lane.
I think, as two people who reside in Columbus, Ohio, the birthplace of Wendy's, it's on us. We have to tell them. We have to hold Wendy's accountable. We have to hold. They didn't need to do it.
No.
Their chicken nuggets are great. I love their chicken nuggets. I think they might have the best chicken nuggets in the fast food game. And they've ruined them by giving them a bath in hot sauce. Frankly, it doesn't even taste good. It's not even good buffalo sauce. It'd be one thing if it was like a nice buttery buffalo sauce, but it's not. It's bad.
But I've also won the argument. I'm thankful to them for winning the boneless buffalo wings are not just nuggets argument, because I think Ari has made that argument before. It's like exhibit number 1. I'm not going to eat them.
It's not nearly the same thing. Yeah. There's something about the imperfection of boneless wings that increases increases the enjoyability of
And also, when you go to a real wing place, you've got to have it that they really are like saucing it. It's not just dumping something on, right? They get it in the big bowl and they're doing that, right? You can tell when a wing's
they're crispy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I've been saving this for months to try to do this because I'm so moderately offended by the attempt and that they're so vigorously promoting it in the college football sphere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Vigorous. Aren't they vigorous? Don't they sponsor Urban Meyer too? Isn't Urban Meyer on Fox eating saucy nugs?
I'm never gonna, I get it. They want to give you a bag to pump their stuff. It happens, but be a little more discerning, right? Stand by it. I don't want to be sponsored by something that I think tastes bad.
Yeah, no, I agree. But if we'll be sponsored by a single combo.
Oh
right?
yeah.
Or a Frosty. We'll sponsor Frosty. Yeah.
Spicy sandwich is the number 6. Yeah, we'll be sponsored by number 6.
Yeah. Just not this. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to throw these away. I can't even smell them. Thank you to my wife for getting them for me. I was like, okay, I really want to do the spicy nugs thing. Can you go get them? And we had to
what's going to happen with those? What's going to happen with those now? We just had a 15-minute conversation about how they don't taste good. Are you going to eat them?
I'm probably going to give them to the dog. So anyway, I'm just outraged. We'll have delicious sponsors someday, right? But you're allowed to say that. It's just not our taste. That's all. Yeah. It's just not for us. Yeah. It's not for us.
Right. I just don't like. Yeah. If you like them, that's fine. I just don't like being berated with things that don't taste good.
Yeah.
Like, get it out of my face.
Yeah. And don't try to trick us. Yeah. Like I feel like they're trying to hey, you love buffalo. It's like, yeah, I love that, but it's not. Mm-hmm. There's more than just the sauce. It's the combining of all the things. Okay. This is the show we do. Look at you. Look at you. Look at the life you've picked for yourself. Does your brother like the show? Or is he like, why do you work with that guy?
No, I think he likes it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
At least he lies to me and tells me he does.
Yeah, that's very nice.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thursday, Penn State, SMU, and picks. So we're going to pick all 4 first-round games, and I think you know this. We're picking our brackets. We are declaring who we think is going to win the national championship on the Thursday show. So we'll have a nice deep dive, big game breakdown on the last game we haven't covered yet, and then we'll do all the other stuff. We appreciate you guys being part of it. Give us a thumb, subscribe, tell a friend. Thanks, as always, to Stephen Godfrey for stopping by. We always enjoy talking to him. Thanks to our great producer Mike, who makes us look good and sound good. For now, he's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of the North.